So guys, my name is Nikolai, as Darina mentioned. I'm a founder and a CEO of Opencare. And today I'm going to share with you my journey, 12-year journey building healthcare companies. And I started out my first company in 2004. So it's a while back ago, and for the fans of Jack Nicholson, I want to show you how it looked then. Here we go. Let's see if it works. And it actually looked a bit more like that. It wasn't sexy at all. In 2004, we started a company called Sims, and that was a medical imaging SaaS company. And everybody around us thought we were like complete nutbars. They're like, what are you, fucking crazy? What are you doing? This is like the most antiquated industry. Everything is on paper, so much regulations, and like you won't be able to get through. And we're like, whatever. I was 18 then, and I was kind of rebellious. It was like kind of perfect fit for me. So like we went through this, and we've done quite well. We grew it to do 10% of all the diagnostic imaging in Canada at the point when we sold it. And it was an exciting journey. At the same time, it was a pretty scary journey for a person in early 20s. At that point in time, we didn't have Amazon Web Services. And when our infrastructure went down, 10% of Canadian healthcare system went down. And after that, I went on and built a chain of cardiology clinics, and that was even crazier because now we're going brick and mortar healthcare. You know, it's completely not sexy, and everybody thought once again we're crazy. And we managed to set up 5 locations across Toronto. In the first 6 months, we started getting ready for expansion to Florida, and I realized definitely brick and mortar is not sexy, and I'm a nerd, and I love building tech products. And the only place where we can innovate in brick and mortar was actually patient service or customer service. So while I was building those companies, something very interesting. My friends and family started calling me up, and they were like, hey, Nikolai, can you hook me up with a great healthcare provider? I was like, holy fuck, here it comes again. I was like, okay, fine. I pick up my phone, call like CEOs of different EMR companies, and I was like, I need this type of doctor, and I would connect them. And that kept happening, and I started feeling that I'm like everyone's personal healthcare concierge, and it's kind of started getting annoying, but sooner or later, after a lot of those calls, the bulb went off, and I was like, how does the rest of the population who don't have my phone number get a great healthcare? So we started exploring US market specifically, and I kind of looked around Canadian, nothing was going on. First discovery was actually pretty upsetting. There's a bunch of players. So we had ZocDoc, Vitals, Better Doctor, even Yelp was participating in the space. So we were like, shit, we're late to the game. And then we thought, well, healthcare is a big market. Maybe we can carve out a niche. And started looking for a niche in $5.5 trillion market. To put it in perspective, everybody heard of Uber, all the money they raised and et cetera. US taxi industry is only $16 billion. So we kept looking, and the next thing we discovered was very unexpected. No one in the industry was winning, and it was very weird because ZocDoc raised $300 million. Healthgrades has been around for 15 years. And, well, you guys know Yelp, but none of them were winning in healthcare space. So we kept digging. We're trying to figure out what's really going on. And what we've learned is they're in this rat race of creating better directory and competing who has like a better profile for a doctor and dumping more and more data on a consumer. So ultimately, we have hundreds of options in that directory. One doc went to this med school, another one did this. This one has professional misconduct. Consumers already overwhelmed with the complexity of healthcare, and those guys gave even more complexity. And that started becoming clear that, wow, there's quite an open market out there. And today, with those solutions, we choose doctors the same way we choose where we're going to have lunch, which is scary. And that's where we started getting excited again, and that's where healthcare for us started getting quite sexy. We started seeing the future, and the future is really using data to give people recommendations, either around healthcare discovery, which healthcare provider to go, or understanding the pricing. There's so many use cases, and there's more and more data being produced. And that's what we're working on at Opencare. And remember I mentioned $5.5 trillion market, so we thought, well, we still need to carve out a niche. We need to, focus on something. Then we're like, well, let's look geographies, and a lot of people might not expect. 3 trillion out of that 5.5 is actually US healthcare system. And once again, you can compare that to the taxi industry. So we went and then said, well, 3 trillion is all great and exciting. Let's figure out what's our niche. And then basically we saw that there's every year 70 million Americans go, and Canadians, I'm so used to doing those presentations in US, go online to look for a healthcare provider, trying to figure out who out of 1.5 million of healthcare providers and private practices can solve their problems. And there's $800 billion spent in private practices, and those healthcare providers spend $16 billion trying to get in front of those consumers and trying to help them. So a massive opportunity, and healthcare started getting really, really sexy by then, and it became the fastest growing segment in venture capital. As a result, you can see we had a Formation 8, which is today named 8 Partners, is one of the top tier funds in Silicon Valley. They led our previous round. There's a bunch of other great participants. You probably heard of Real Ventures and Mars. And it wasn't that bad anymore. It started definitely getting sexier. But it's still old-ass industry, and so much stuff is broken. It's like, yeah, we've decorated, we've digitized some parts of it, but there's so much stuff to fix. And from here on, I'd like to talk about how we can fix it together. And some of you might have came here to learn the secret sauce of how to build this awesome healthcare tech product. Well, sorry to break the news, there's no secret sauce, and there's really no magic to building healthcare products. But one thing we've noticed going through years building all the products was that everyone was making the same mistakes, including us. We made a shit ton of them. And what's interesting, everyone was making the same mistakes across all the industries. So we hang out in the Valley a lot, hence that's my kind of uniform. I'm in a hoodie always. And we've chatted to dozens of companies there, bunch of unicorns, and ultimately we kept seeing the same mistakes and the same challenges. And what it comes down to is how people think about product management. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of product managers in the group. I'm not product manager by training, but I'd like to think I have a good sense for it, and I guess I've seen a lot of data. And one frustrating thing, getting ready for this presentation, I went online and I wanted to get proper definition of product management. I read through so much bullshit, I was like, wow, who writes this crap? And ultimately, product management is all about prioritization. It's all about creating maximum value with least resources deployed. It's as simple as that. We as entrepreneurs, we get excited, we can build every feature, and we're like overly optimistic. Ultimately, we spread ourselves too thin, and we're doing it for other reasons that I'll talk about. And I think prioritization is completely broken today. And I see a lot of companies making product decisions based on who is the loudest in the room, or who has at least some kind of data to validate that this is the right thing to build. But in reality, also as entrepreneurs, or as other people in organizations, smart people, and tech attracts a lot of really smart people. We like to think that we really know our customer, and we're just building only the right things, and we'll find where to get money later. And those are the 3 areas that are very concerning to me. The amount of customer discovery that's being done in the companies, the business model, how people think about business models, and focus. What people focus on. And I'm going to give you a bonus one, regulations, since we're talking about healthcare. And I'll get this one out of the way first. Here's a little slide that shows you regulations, a list of regulations just in the healthcare insurance business. So you can kind of extrapolate from there and imagine the list of all regulations in healthcare. So here's what I say to regulations. Fuck regulations. And the reason I say that is young companies, when they get into healthcare space, the first thing they start thinking about, holy shit, it's regulated, we gotta take care of all this stuff, we gotta hire lawyers, we gotta lawyer up, and they're actually dead before they're even born. Comes back to prioritization. They prioritize their resources and time in a completely wrong place, so now they have all those great documents, but they have nothing to offer to the customer. Where you should really focus on is building something that the customer wants. Building it at a small scale, getting people to commit to that product. And once you're there, you can do MVP on regulations. You can kind of, get the minimum regulatory approvals that you need. And I'll chat a little bit more about it. But I want to talk first about two paradoxes that regulations create. They're EMR and healthcare venture capital space. So first one on the screen, you see the most widely used electronic medical record in the United States, Epic. What would happen if your Facebook looked like that? So that's what kind of products we produce as a result of focusing on regulations. It's like you're almost building to the government spec and you completely forget about your customer. So what you end up doing, actually going through all the regulations and specifications, and you're not disrupting or reinventing the industry. You're just digitizing the garbage that has been created 20 years ago and make it digital and make it a little bit prettier, hopefully more efficient. But when I talk to doctors, I haven't met a doctor who loves his or her EMR. The only thing they do is bitch and complain. I was like, hey, I want to go back to paper. I was like, dude, but we got to be digital. So here's the result of the people focusing on regulations. The second part are venture capitalists in the healthcare space. I spent a lot of time with healthcare VCs, and it was kind of the same experience over and over again. They basically listen to you, and they're like, you tell them how you're going to disrupt the industry, and then you go, well, I've been in the industry for 25 years, but this is not how things are done in the industry. I was like, no shit, you're a venture capitalist, aren't you funding a company that's going to disrupt that? So they're so stuck in their way of thinking, and what they're looking for is automations of existing systems, and you get this crap. So here are the two interesting paradoxes that happen. So in a nutshell, build what customers want. Once you have that, sell it. If they're actually willing to pay or they sign the contract, awesome. Only then find the right lawyer. And when I say the right lawyer, if the lawyer comes back and says, well, you can't do this, regulations say this, fire that guy. Hire another lawyer who will say, let me figure out a way how we navigate this. This is how industries are disrupted. Uber scenario in the case was very public. You guys probably were following. It would be a pretty sad place here in Toronto if Uber was illegal. But I'm pretty sure they wouldn't stop. So healthcare is a little bit more touchy, but it's doable. We've done it. A lot of companies have done it. So don't be afraid. Just find the right lawyer. And be creative with that lawyer to invest minimum resources to get the approvals that you need. So that's the regulations. So let's dive in out of healthcare. And let's talk about things that matter across all products, not just healthcare. And the first one is customer discovery. So as I've touched on, it's pretty scary when I look at the companies, how much customer development or discovery companies do. They do 2-3 interviews here, and they do 1 or 2 surveys here, and then it's like, oh shit, we have all the data. Well, if there's no data, there's no knowledge. If you have some data, it's same shit. There's like, you don't know anything. And you're basically gambling with a lot of resources. Might as well go to Niagara Falls Casino and like put it all on the roulette. Because if you actually look at the numbers, to run a small product team with 1 engineer, 1 product manager, and 1 product designer, it costs $300 an hour. And to run a startup of 10 people, it costs around $900 an hour. So when the whole product team is moving in a weird direction because they think that's the right thing to build, that's how much money you're burning, plus you're burning all the overhead. And you're not getting to the right places. And people don't really connect those numbers. They're like, oh, but we're building, we're creating all this great shit. Who cares? It's just gonna ultimately go into the trash. So it might sound very like a common sense, but as I've mentioned, spent quite a bit of time in the Valley, spent quite a bit of time here, spent a lot of time with product managers, with other people on the product teams. And you'll be surprised how few of the companies do this well. So around customer discovery. So when we built the first company, Sims, our customer discovery was very easy. We were bootstrapping. We didn't have money. So we built whatever we could. We sold it, which was great, but we sold half-baked product. And then from there, customer discovery got super easy. The way we prioritized, once we heard 10 people screaming at us over the phone of what they were missing, we're like, holy shit, we gotta build this. That's actually how I learned all my swearing words in English. As you can hear, I'm not from here, but I heard so much swearing in that first year after we deployed our software. But that made it very easy for us to actually prioritize what we need to build, because you could see patterns on how loud people scream and how many of them scream. You can almost measure the noise, and and here's your priorities for the product. And then we went to Opencare, and things got quite more complex. Now we're not only B2B, we're also B2C, because we're a marketplace, we're connecting consumer with a small business, because ultimately that's what healthcare practice is. And we had to really build out a solid infrastructure. We needed to predict what people wanted. And there is a very important distinction between B2B customers and B2C customers. B2B customers get paid for 8 hours a day to think about their problems. The reason they have a job because they're solving some kind of problem. When you think about consumers, they're just like strolling through their life, and you're like throwing products in them, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I need this or if it solves my problem. They don't even realize that they have a lot of problems because they use, duct tape to solve some things and other patchy solutions. So that gets even more intense. How do you get into consumers' head and actually understand what's truly going on there? Because if you ask them directly, they'll give you a bunch of garbage, and it will take you in a completely wrong direction. So as I mentioned, we've invested a lot of time at Opencare building out infrastructure for customer discovery, and we ended up with this, and this is not everything. This is the way we gather data from consumers. And only with this we're starting to feel confident and can actually project what kind of KPI of improvements we're gonna achieve by building specific feature, whereas in the past it was like, I think it's gonna be 10% improvement. Why do you think so? Oh, because. And just I'll maybe talk about the first three quickly. So in product chat, when we see somebody going through our product, we can ping them. And like if they're stuck, we can ping them and ask them why they're stuck, and like try to understand what they're thinking at that point in time. Concierge service. We took part of our traffic going to opencare.com and sent it to a chat. They couldn't even experience our product. They were experiencing Amanda on the other side of the screen saying, hey, how can we help you? And we had like live conversation trying to assist them with finding a healthcare provider. Another example of that, button to concierge. A lot of people are saying, you know what, we want to know the prices before we commit to this healthcare provider. We're like, well, why? Like, why are you asking for that? So we put a button and say, hey, see prices. They click see prices. There are no prices. They're talking to Amanda again. And now we can ask them right in the moment, hey, what's going on? Why do you need to see prices? So here's the list. There's many more things. As a result, we have this fire hose of data now, and this data is going to a lot of people on the team. And it's kind of partially siloed, and we're trying to merge it together because it's actually hard to run all those pipelines of data. As a result, we see a new role emerging in the product management or in a product team role is a user researcher role. So a person who will take care of all those channels, analyze all this data, extract insights, and deliver it to the product team. And by the way, we're hiring for this role. So if you're really good with Excel and you've done research in the past, and hopefully you have a psychology degree, then you should definitely chat to me or one of the guys in one of similar hoodies. They're different colors, so don't look for orange, but you'll find them at the back. So that's for customer discovery. So hopefully you will have, by here, you didn't waste all the money on regulations, and you've done customer discovery, and because you're smart, you have some money left. You gotta actually think a little bit about business model. And guess what? We've been drinking fucking Kool-Aid, same as the rest of the Silicon Valley, for like the first few years of our company. Everybody was screaming growth, growth, profit margins doesn't matter, nothing matters, just growth. And then somewhere along the way, we were like, okay, we're great in growth, everything is up to the right. But it doesn't make sense. Fundamentally, we're not optimizing for the right things. We don't know what to prioritize for. The only thing we're prioritizing for is acquire more users, increase usage. But doesn't mean that it will produce money down the road. And this is very critical. And as you know, this winter, the winter really came. And every VC wanted you to own ATM machine. Unless your business is an ATM machine that spits out money, they don't care. That's what truly matters. And this might sound very capitalistic or like, oh, it's all about money, about healthcare, it helps people. You know what? Money is the best metric of the value you create. If people are not willing to give you money, that means you're creating nice to have thing that doesn't really impact people. It makes them slightly happier. And if they're actually partying with their money, you've got something. You're onto something. So every business, I believe, should have something like this. It's called a revenue formula. Once you understand your business model, you can build this formula. And this is a simplified version. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. And from there, you can truly start understanding what are your drivers of your business. And you can get deeper, and each of those boxes gets another box. And like, you can truly start working on the right things that creates revenue, which means you're creating value. So let's focus on patient funnel. So it's interesting. We have one part of our product is converting patient as they come to our site to a transaction. And the higher the conversion rate of that funnel, the better we're serving that customer. That means the better product we're delivering. That means we're addressing their problems. And what's interesting, a lot of people talk about when you ask somebody, is like, do you have product market fit? And they're like, of course. And it's like, well, do you have some data to show it? And I was like, well, you can't really measure it. It's like, you just feel when you have everything's taking off. And it's like, I call bullshit on that. If you can't measure it, you don't know what the fuck you are right now. So I think product market fit is easily measurable. And this is an example of product market fit metric for the consumer side. Because the higher conversion rate of the funnel is, that means the better we're serving our consumers or the patients, hence we're having better product market fit. So from here, talking about business model, another kind of healthcare alert. This is the chart of all the stakeholders in US healthcare system. In the middle, you'll see, in the center, you see Secretary of Health and Human Services. So pretty complex, similar as the regulatory stuff. And I think people get caught up in that, and they're like, holy shit, we gotta give this to this person, that person will give it to that, and then we're gonna get money from this. If you're in that scenario, you're dead. Once again, the business model has to be dead simple. There should be only one if statement. If we give this to this person, they're gonna give us money. If you have multiple ifs, you're done. You won't have enough money. You won't have enough time. Unless you're like Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, Elon Musk, where people are just throwing money at you. And, well, I'm pretty sure they didn't come to this presentation, so. So keep it very simple. And so now we got customer discovery figured out, and we also have business model. And only then you can unlock the third thing, is your. There's going to be Q&A after, and you can ask your question. So you gotta find your focus, and you cannot answer this question. You cannot be everything to everyone. That's what messes with entrepreneurs' heads. Is like, oh, we can pull all-nighters, we can build all features. No, that's not the way you do it. That's an indicator to me that you're gambling, that you don't know your customer, that you don't know your business model, hence you're trying to build as many features as possible. Hopefully one of them will work. That's a great approach when you have super deep pocket. And you should rather focus on building one thing really, really well. So to give you an example, at Opencare, we're first, as an organization, we're a growth-first company, where we're like, really know how to acquire users. And that's how we started. Product was secondary. So in a matter of 10 months, we've registered. There's 150,000 healthcare providers came on our platform and registered, joined our platform. And now we had 150,000 healthcare providers across North America to serve. That's like 10% of all healthcare providers in this universe. meaning North American universe. So we felt like a nanny trying to manage 150,000 babies. And we were just like going nuts. Oh, this specialty has this specialty has that, that geography had this uniqueness. It was not working. So we said, you know what? We need to focus. And since then, we're laser focused on doing dentistry in Toronto really well, serving dentists and serving customers, patients who are looking for dentists really well. And it unlocked the next level of prioritization. And that's where everything has changed. We were able to serve them properly and deliver great user experience. But the most important part of that is actually we're achieving success in one market much faster because we're laser focusing. That means we have a visibility what the path to success looks like. Hence, we can create a playbook, and we can take that playbook and replicate it in another geography and like spread it across North America. Then we can take the same playbook and adopt it to physical therapists, dermatologists, cardiologists, and the list goes on. It's all about creating that first basic unit of rollout or process strategy of how to achieve success. And when you start feeling success, everything starts getting more exciting. So, summary, in a nutshell, healthcare is a massive market that's getting sexier, but there's still a lot of bullshit, and just gotta watch out for that. Forget about regulations. Focus on your customers and build what they truly want. Figure out who will pay. And laser focus on one segment of your customers. From there, you're gonna get a playbook, and you can scale your company and join the club of unicorns. Thank you. Oh, I need this. Who's paying? Clinic's paying. Yeah.
How did you decide to like fix on dentists, you said, in Toronto as the first market?
You run a bunch of financial models and understand which specialty and geography creates the most leverage for your business. And you can only do that once you have some data about your customers. And then we figured out that dentistry is the specialty that creates the most leverage. To put it in perspective, dentistry in the US is $120 billion. They spend $2.5 billion on patient acquisition. So that was the right direction. From there, Toronto is the third largest city in North America. Of course, I'm simplifying everything, but basically you gotta really look at a bunch of indicators and figure out where can you create success in a reasonable amount of time, where you can actually create enough leverage so you can launch another city.
Hi. So I really like your advice about forgetting about the regulations and focusing on the customer, but and I generally agree. But obviously, you do have to. There's some balance to be struck, right? So I'd be curious, how do you think about that balance?
So the balance is, first of all, as I mentioned, prove that somebody wants your product. Once that's a scenario. So let's say I give you an example of you selling SaaS product to a hospital. They'll probably ask for HIPAA compliance. They signed the contract. You're freaking out, holy shit, we need HIPAA compliance. Guess what? There's at least 3 products on the market that can make you HIPAA compliant in under 2 weeks. So you also want to be strategic how you think about it, right? So we're changing some things around billing in the healthcare industry and regulations there. We just literally sat the lawyer down, found the most creative lawyer, and sat him down in the boardroom and tell him until we figure out 3 different options where you're not leaving this boardroom. And but we did that once we validated that people are willing to pay and they're super jacked about our offering. Everybody's like, holy shit, yes, that's the... And then we're like, okay, now we need to lawyer up and get the regulations in place. So you don't ignore them. You just need to understand the right timing and the amount. And you want to do the basically minimum viable product on legal stuff, not like all other lawyers. You need the stack of papers. Like, you're not going to read them.
Over here.
I have a small question. You said that when you started out that not a lot was happening in Canada and you started in the US.
Well, first company we started in Canada. And
okay.
We dominated Canadian market in the private sector. Here, the reason we started this company right away was a focus on US because of the numbers. Canada is a big beta site for us. And as a result, Canada gets great services and et cetera. We test everything here, and that's actually on the topic of regulatory work. It's not a litigious country. So you can screw up multiple times before you get sued. So you might as well screw up here, and then.
Yeah, that's my question, basically. I just wanted to jump on that. How strong do you think the regulation in Canada compared to the US is hurting the healthcare industry?
I think US industry is more complex than Canadian. Canadian is a single payer system, so that simplifies a lot of stuff. While you break it up into provincial stuff, and US is just like complete Wild West.
Okay, we have one more here.
Compared to Yelp, what is your differentiator like for your product? What's the differentiator? Why wouldn't I just Google different dentists and find the top ones around in Toronto right here?
Okay. So Yelp will just give you our review data. We look at a lot of data, professional misconduct, education. We actually send someone on site to the clinic with a massive checklist to make sure the clinic meets our quality standard. What's really funny, if you really think about quality in healthcare, it's very binary. You either passed your medical exam or you didn't. But that's not the way the world works. There are shitty dentists, there are awesome dentists, and there are a lot in between. And as you start getting into subspecialties or procedures, somebody who's just good overall might be awesome in root canals. Do you want to see a guy who did 50 root canals or a guy who did 5,000 root canals?
Okay. We have one last question here.
Thanks for speaking to us.
Oh,
over here.
I'm like so confused.
I'm one of those physicians who likes to bitch about EMRs a lot because if you're aware, I don't know if you're aware, but physicians on average spend 7 hours of their working day on an EMR, and most of that time is clicking through different menu options.
Yep.
So given that, how do you explain why a company like Epic still exists?
Well,
and how, like, what can you do to bring about like the demise of Epic?
Yeah. The same reason why my first company that still exists, I'm not there, and I think now they're probably at 15% of a market share, because there was nothing else. We were literally taking the industry from pen and paper and digitizing it. The most hilarious moment we have a girl working for us who was doing all the training, and I walk into the room, she's sitting with the 60-year-old radiologist and teaching them how to use the mouse. So she's like, hey, click X, do it 10 times now. He's getting frustrated. He's like, what am I, 3 here? I was like, I know I'm gonna walk out, and you're gonna forget how to close the window. And it got even crazier when you sometimes walk into a radiology room, and radiology screens cost around $25,000. They're like high-res, special backlighting, blah, blah, blah. You gotta be looking at high-resolution digital images at them. And there's all types of tools to perfect the viewing. And I walk into the room, and there's this guy sitting with physical magnifying glass, magnifying the image on the screen, rather than magnifying the actual data. So that's the time where we started. That's why any crap, Sims, to be honest, if I look at that product right now, it's in a different category. It's like Epic category. The only difference we made it web. It was like in the cloud, everybody's like, holy shit.
Join me in, that was so loud. Please join me in thanking Nikolai for his amazing talk.